it's by going to go
Even though there's loads of colour in it.
on the floor or something.
You and that.
It's actually to me and two other people not to go.
Yeah.
And Steiner. I was
Go where? Go to where?
What?
It's not going to?
You're not going?
I usually go twice a year.
This year I might just give gifts.
So for you, you don't need to go.
It's a river well.
I'll have a shower.
No, the shower makes sense.
Oh, no.
You're not even doing the same mixture.
No, what? Yeah, you should go to the sea. Go to Ainsdale.
You can go so they want that much.
There's a lot more restrictions.
Why is that better?
I'm not so sure about
A number of people don't need that much tomorrow. That's the first one in.
I'm not going to first win.
I think it gets open between 5 and 5:30 by Yaakov.
Yeah, you need to wear a mask. We're in a class. You don't need
Right.
to drink any water.
Which one do you want? This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want more?
Yeah, give him a cup, yeah.
Okay. A lot of different topics today. It says more like this. We're up to Daf Mem Amud Aleph. 6 lines from the top. Hahu lifter, there was this turnip. The Osili Mechuzah. It was brought by Goyim to Mechuzah. Nofak Rava went, Chazid the Kamisha. Rava saw that the turnip was slightly dry, slightly withered. So therefore, he worked out that it hadn't been plucked that day. It wasn't a fresh vegetable, it was an old vegetable. Shova Rava. Rava permitted it. Lemizma minay to buy from the Goy. Oma. Why did he permit it? He said as follows. So it was uprooted before Yom Tov came in because you can see that it's withered. So there's no problem of koitza. So which problem is there? My almost what are you worried about that maybe it came out of the tchum? So even though there's no problem of koitza, there's a problem of chutz tchum. If it comes from one yid, another yid is allowed to eat it. So therefore, it didn't come for any. More carries on. The choshkin high that's nochim also. This turnip was bought to sell amongst goyim. So kavachim that yid is allowed to buy it. If it's already bought from one yid, another yid, kavachim over here. If one goy does it, so kavachim another goy. So if it's bought for a good, that yid is allowed to buy it. When he saw that people were bringing bringing a very lot of turnips to sell. Once they were bringing a lot of turnips to sell, he understood that the reason why the goyim were bringing it was in order to sell it for Yidden. And I mentioned this right then yesterday. When the goy brings something for a big group of Yidden, it is forbidden for any of the Yidden. So since the goy was specially bringing turnips to sell on Yom Tov for the purpose of the Kehillah, therefore it's forbidden to everybody. Now, Teres asks a very, very strong question. The Rava worked out that it had been harvested the day before. How? By seeing that it was withered, dry. Had it not been harvested the day before, there would have been a problem of koitza. If it would be a problem of koitza, what's the problem? We're talking about a goy doing it for another goy. Just like he said that when it comes out of the tchum, it is permitted, because the goy is bringing it for one goy, and now a yid is going to eat it. So what difference does it make? There's been a problem of koitza, a problem out of the tchum. Either way, the goy never intended it for Yidden. So what did Rava gain by examining the turnip and saying, "Oh, I can see that it's a bit out of date. It's already a bit with it." What did he gain from it? You hear the question? This is a very interesting answer. That had it been harvested on the day, it would be a problem of muktzah. That's what this says. And since the muktzah, why? Because since when Yom Tov came in, you couldn't harvest it, therefore it's forbidden. So it's nothing to do over here with the issa that we thought in the beginning. Oh, no. Something which is not by you doesn't become muktzah, because at the end of the day, people around to think about it. Something which nobody can get, that becomes muktzah. So therefore, he had to come to the conclusion that it was dry, and therefore there's no problem with muktzah because it was already harvested before. Okay. Next story. We always have a principle of v'chtei shiyasu. What's v'chtei shiyasu? That if a guy works for me on Yom Tov or Shabbos, I'm not allowed to benefit. Not only I'm not allowed to benefit on Yom Tov and Shabbos, I'm not even allowed to benefit v'chtei shiyasu. I have to wait for the amount of time that it takes for him to do it. So let's say he cooked me an egg. So I can't eat it on Yom Tov. I have to wait. I can't even eat it on Shabbos. I have to wait Motzei Shabbos for the amount of time it takes to cook an egg. There's a big machlokes in the poskim already, and in the Rishonim as well, as to whether do you have to consider the amount of time that he cooked it plus the amount of time it took him to bring it round to you, or just the amount of time that he cooked it. Okay, it's not so negative. This particular Gemara is a shaila in the poskim. The Gemara now declares like this: regarding second day Yom Tov, what would you say? Second day Yom Tov we know is more lenient, because after all it's only a safra d'Rabbanan. Do we say that you don't need v'chtei shiyasu because it's second day Yom Tov, or do we say no, you do need v'chtei shiyasu? That's the whole shaila of the next Gemara. Very straightforward. Hanu b'nei ganona. Well, these gardeners or people that would make chuppahs, the gozulu asa what? Canopy makers, make chuppahs. The gozulu asa b'Yom Tov sheni. They cut down the hadas tree on second day Yom Tov. Why? In those days they used to use hadassim for the chuppah. So what happened was, Le'uta, when it came to evening, Sholu Avina La'ruche Be Le'alta. He allowed them to smell it immediately. That means to benefit from these hadassim immediately. He did not expect v'chtei shiyasu. The Ritual says, and it's my symbol from the Gemara, that all he was trying to say is that there's no din v'chtei shiyasu on second day Yom Tov. You should forbid it. Why? Because they're not to be the chachamim, and therefore they're likely to be mezazel on second day Yom Tov. It's only because not b'nei Torah. How b'nei Torah? Sorry, if there'd be b'nei Torah, they'd be permitted. Well, b'nei v'chtei shiyasu. You need v'chtei shiyasu. Ozu shalu l'rava, amalu b'nei v'chtei shiyasu, and that's what we pass. Even second day Yom Tov, you need v'chtei shiyasu. A person has to be very mach with second day Yom Tov, even the gabe, the din of v'chtei shiyasu. That means even though second day Yom Tov is to Rabbanon, and the guy doing malacha is to Rabbanon, so it's only a shvus to shvus. Nevertheless, not only not allowed to benefit from it, you're not even allowed to benefit from its Motzei Shabbos until the amount of time that it takes to Motzei Yom Tov, the amount of time it takes him to do the malacha. So here, there's a little bit where it's a raya that you need a tiny. You also have to include the time it takes to bring it to you, because how long does it take to cut a hadas? A second, and to smell it also. It's like, so what was the big difference between immediate and a long-term basis? That's what they say, that from cutting it from the tree, then bringing it to you is much longer. Okay, but I say it's not clear in the poskim, so I'm not going to pass. I'm just saying this is one of the places they try to bring a raya that you also have to bring machmir de shiyasu from cutting it to me.
You say it takes 1 second to cut one rubber, but they're cutting 500, and then they'll take them a good hour.
But they only want to smell one hadas. We do hadassim. They're only trying to smell one hadas, make a nice smell of burning some. Right. Every Rosh Hashanah is also Rosh Chodesh. Rabbi Dosa in our Mishnah tells us that every day of Rosh Hashanah it's a suffix Rosh Chodesh, because we don't know which day is Rosh Chodesh going to be. So Rabbi Dosa included in his davening an interesting version of Tefillah, which was that if today is Rosh Chodesh, look after us and it's Rosh Chodesh. If tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, look after us tomorrow Rosh Chodesh. That's what Rabbi Dosa said. And the Chachamim did not agree with him. There are two ways to understand what they did not agree. Two ways to understand what the argument was. Argument number one is that they felt that on Rosh Hashanah we don't mention Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah we don't mention Rosh Chodesh. It's enough that you mention Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaZikaron can include Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh, as we'll see. So therefore, they didn't agree with him at all that you should mention Rosh Chodesh. Miss out Rosh Chodesh. In fact, that is, except for the Musaf we mentioned a little bit, we don't mention on Rosh Hashanah anything to do with Rosh Chodesh, which is how we pass it. We don't mention, even though Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh, right? We don't mention it. Raisa, that's one argument. Do we mention Rosh Chodesh as a separate entity? That's one machlokes. Or a different way to understand machlokes is that everybody agrees you mention Rosh Chodesh. The reason they disagreed with Rabbi Dosa was they did not like the way he spoke, which was that if today it's Rosh Chodesh, Hashem should stay. If tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh, Hashem should be strengthened us tomorrow. Why? Speaking that language reminds people that it's only a suffix, but it's even Rosh Hashanah altogether. And that will cause people to be mezalzel in Rosh Hashanah. So there's two ways to understand. Maybe they didn't want to mention Rosh Chodesh altogether, or if you're going to mention Rosh Chodesh, Don't mention it as a doubtful question, but mention it as a vadot. There's two ways to understand of this. This is the whole sukkah over here. He wants says like this. Of this, even if they are terrible, Omar, Ki Avinon be Rav Huna when I was by Rav Huna's Beis HaMedrash. We asked this question. Do we mention Rosh Chodesh Rosh Hashanah? In the end of the day, in the time of Beis HaMikdash, they did bring Musaf Rosh Chodesh. They did. Besides for all the kabbanas that they brought of Musaf Rosh Hashanah, they also brought the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, since it's a different kabban Musaf, so therefore, we have to mention it. Since the Torah mentions the word Zikoin by both, because by Rosh Hashanah it says Zichron Teruah, and by Rosh Chodesh it says Vayolachem Zikoin. So therefore, since it mentions both, so therefore it's not necessary to mention one word. Zikon is enough. Omalon. So Rav Huna replied, "Tinisua." Learned from our Mishnah. Abdoisa says one goes in front of the Shliach Tzibur, and the Chachamim didn't agree with him. My love, is it not that they did not agree with him? That the Chachamim said to Abdoisa, we're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh. At this stage, what one understands, Abdoisa said, mention Rosh Chodesh, and the Chachamim said, no, don't mention Rosh Chodesh, we're not actually mentioning Rosh Chodesh. He says, well, no, that's not what Abdoisa meant. That's not what they were arguing about, Lahasnos. They were arguing about, should you make this whole complicated version of saying a condition? If today's Rosh Chodesh strengthens us on this day, and if tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh strengthens us tomorrow. Hachinam mistabel. We have a brisa which says very, very similar to our Mishnah, with one difference. In our Mishnah, Abdoisa and the Chachamim are arguing regarding Rosh Hashanah. The brisa says they're arguing about Rosh Chodesh, every Rosh Chodesh of the year. Now, if you say they're arguing as to whether you should say the condition that if today's Rosh Chodesh mentioned today Rosh Chodesh, if tomorrow, like every time there's 2 days Rosh Chodesh, Abdoisa would say in his davening, if today's Rosh Chodesh strengthen me today, if tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh should strengthen us tomorrow. And the Chachamim said not. So that makes sense that they argue about should you mention this condition, this Tanai. But if the argument is whether you should mention Rosh Chodesh altogether, so Bishlev on Rosh Hashanah, there's a question whether you should mention Rosh Chodesh altogether. But every other Rosh Chodesh, what would the halacha be? Of course you should mention Rosh Chodesh. What would the halacha be? You should mention Rosh Chodesh. So Elamai, there must be argued about the condition, not about the statement. Says the Gemara, every single Rosh Chodesh of the whole year, whenever it was 2 days, he would say, like we say, he would say, if today is Rosh Chodesh, and if not, tomorrow. They didn't agree with him. He said they're arguing about whether you should say this condition. That's what they're arguing about. If you say they're arguing about whether you should mention Rosh Chodesh altogether, why shouldn't they mention Rosh Chodesh the rest of the year? So the Gemara's got to be here 2 understandings. What's the machlokes between Abdoisa and the Chachamim? One understanding is the argument is should you mention Rosh Chodesh altogether, or whether you should mention this condition. The Gemara says it must be the machlokes is the condition, and everybody agrees you should mention. Why? Because otherwise, what's the machlokes the rest of the year? Of course, the rest of the year you have to mention it. Says the Gemara. The argument is should you say it? Should you not say it? Why does the Brisa tell us anything which the Mishnah doesn't? The Mishnah told us that the machlokes of Abdoisa and the Chachamim is, should you say this version of a condition depending on which day Rosh Chodesh is? Comes along the Brisa and says, and they argue about this every single Rosh Chodesh. Furthermore, why should you think that every Rosh Chodesh should be different from Rosh Hashanah? Just like they argue about Rosh Hashanah, they should argue about Rosh Chodesh. Why does the Brisa need to add to us that they argue about this every day, every Rosh Chodesh? Explain better. Again, the Mishnah says they argue about Rosh Hashanah. Should you say this version of if today, if tomorrow? Says the Brisa, they argue about this thing every Rosh Chodesh of the year. Furthermore, what do you need to add that? Obviously, if you argue about it in Rosh Hashanah, you argue about it every day of the year, every month of the year.
If you just bring Rosh Hashanah, and I thought it's just arguing.
But why? Why? No, now at this stage of the Gemara's understanding that they're not arguing about whether you should mention Rosh Chodesh or not. Everybody agrees you mention Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Hashanah. The only question is, do you say this condition? Why would there be a different answer? It's obvious. Because on Rosh Hashanah, if you mention this condition, people will then be mezalzel on Rosh Hashanah. Because if you say normal Rosh Chodesh, which you have 2 days, What's the worst comes to? You say, if today is Rosh Chodesh, if tomorrow should be tomorrow, it doesn't matter. That's in the middle of the Chves Tevis, have 2 days Rosh Chodesh Tevis. So who cares if you say that? So the worst comes to us, people will say to themselves, really today is not only a Safar Rosh Chodesh. But if you say it on Rosh Hashanah, people will say, why am I bothering listening to Shofar? Why am I bothering not doing Malachas? Mashenk in the rest of the year, so therefore it could be the only argument Rosh Hashanah. If they argue the rest of the year, you would say that Rosh Hashanah every day agrees you mustn't. So therefore you have to have both machlokas to say that Doisa says even on Rosh Hashanah you should say this version, even though there's a chashash that you might come to Mezalzel in Rosh Hashanah. And the rest of the year you need to argue to tell us that the Chacham say you mustn't say it, even though there's no chashash to come to Mezalzel. It says well like this. Tzvicha, you need it. If you only mention the Machlek Rosh Hashanah, then the Chacham say you shouldn't say this. Why? They shouldn't say it. Every other Rosh Chodesh. Where indeed it's a suffix if it's Rosh Chodesh. 2 days Tevis, only 1 day is Rosh Chodesh. So then we don't mind because we don't care about Mezilza. Maybe they agree to Abdoisa that you should say the condition. If you only talk about all the other months, not Rosh Chodesh, not Rosh Hashanah, but then Abdoisa says that you should make this version and say if today, if tomorrow. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, maybe it gives the Chachamim that you shouldn't say it because by saying it, you're weakening the whole strength of Rosh Hashanah. So you need to have both machlekes. So at this stage of the Gemara understands everybody agrees that you should mention Rosh Chodesh Rosh Hashanah. The machlekes is only whether you should say the condition. How many brachas we say in Musaf Shmoneh Esrei on a Yom Tov? 7. The beginning for the end, and Kedusha Sayom is called. On Rosh Hashanah Musaf, that Malchus, Chodesh, and Shofars. So how many would we say? Say 9. So interesting, a lot of people think 10. What we do is we include in the Malchias Kedusha Sayom. And the problem is, not everybody agrees. This is how we pass it. So what's that? It's Meisvei. Rosh Hashanah Shchali is Shabbos. What happens if Rosh Hashanah is also Shabbos? So now you got Malchus, Chodesh, Shofars. That's 3. Plus 2 beginning at the end. That should be 9. Then you've got Kedusha Sayom of Rosh Hashanah and Kedusha Sayom of Shabbos. So B'Shamar Imi Mispal Es you say 10. You can't put Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah into Malchus. You do Shabbos 1 bracha, Rosh Hashanah and Malchus 1 bracha, and Zechus Shabbos another bracha, and then that's how you do. Or we won't discuss that as well. We you say 9. You put Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, and Malchus into 1 bracha. 3 at the beginning, 3 at the end. You go Malchus, Zechus Shabbos. If it's true, you always have to mention Rosh Chodesh as well. Every Shabbos which is in Rosh Hashanah is also Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah. And if you say everybody agrees, you have to mention Rosh Chodesh. And Beis Shammai's svah is, which bothers you, that why should you mention that Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah you can't mention the same bracha? So the logic dictates that if you can't mention Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah in the same bracha, you should be able to mention Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah in the same bracha. So how many brachas should you have? 11. It means with Shammai Achatzim, they should have 11. 1 for Shabbos, 1 for Rosh Chodesh, 1 for Rosh Hashanah, and then the Chodesh for another 2. It says about that mem on base up on the page. Observer says like this, that the point is, whenever we have a Yom Tov, we mention Yom Tov as a specific own bracha. But Rosh Chodesh, what do we do with Rosh Chodesh? We slip it in somewhere. So therefore, since we slip it in to another bracha, therefore it does not require another bracha even on Rosh Hashanah. Shabbos requires its own bracha. Rosh Hashanah requires its own bracha according to Beis Shammai. But Rosh Chodesh doesn't. As Observer says, Shani Rosh Chodesh. Just like in Shachris and Mariv, when you've got Rosh Chodesh, you just put it in. You mention, for example, that it is Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh, or Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. Kol Nabi Musafim. Fading more, Miyesile Beis Shammai Kol. Do Beis Shammai indeed hold of this halacha that we just included it? But Tanya, Rosh Chodesh Chalios B'Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, which is a Shabbos. What do we do in Rosh Chodesh to Shabbos? How many brachas do we say? 7. And what do we do? The middle bracha, we make it a combination of Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. But what do Beis Shammai say? Beis Shammai Mispalel Shmoina, you say 8. You see that even for Rosh Chodesh they require their own bracha. Or Mispalel Sheva. Kasha. It's a kasha. So again, so the Gemara says like this: according to Beis Shammai, that Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah require their own brachas. Why on Rosh Hashanah, which is a Shabbos, you only have 10? Why not 11? Don't tell me because Rosh Chodesh we slip it into the other bracha. Because Beis Shammai don't hold of that. Beis Shammai actually says Shabbos Rosh Chodesh you make 8 brachas, not 7 brachas like we do. There's a very famous Rashi and a Rashbam, 2 different places, that when the Gemara sometimes uses the word kasha, sometimes the Gemara uses the word tiyufta. Rashi says that the word kasha means that what?
It's not unresolved.
There is a way to answer it, but the Gemara didn't want to suggest it because it's a difficult answer, but there is an answer. But tiyufta means the Gemara is saying that there's no answer. The Rashbam in Bava Basra says differently. Kasha is when it says topic of only derabbanans. Tiyufta when it's an issue of deraisas. That's what Rashbam says. Here the Gemara uses the word kasha, and it's interestingly enough that indeed we'll see the Gemara later then asks what's the halacha, which seems the Gemara understood that it's not completely abgeschlocked, as it says, it's not completely it's answerable. What? And it's derabbanan. That's right. So now the Gemara discusses that since we mentioned the Chodesh, as does it require a separate bracha, we mentioned the halachas of the Chodesh. Some of these halachas are quite well known to us. It comes to the Gemara. This rule that we slip for Chodesh without making a new bracha, it's machlikas tanoi. The Tanya. Shabbos cholias b'Rosh Chodesh. If a Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh, right? Or b'Chodesh Shel Moed. That's a Shabbos Chol HaMoed, Pesach Chol Moed Sukkos. Arba Shachris Mincha. For Arba Shabbos HaMincha, Mispalel Kedar Sheva. You say the normal 7 brachas like we do. In Ritzei, we mention Yalev Yovim, which is what we do. We pass like this shit. Rashi is bothered. Why would you mention Yalev Yovim in Ritzei? So Rashi says because Ritzei is when we ask Hashem that He should accept our korbanos. Rosh Chodesh and Musaf was a time you had to bring extra korbanos. So therefore, when we're davening that Hashem should accept our korbanos, it's important to mention Rosh Chodesh Chol HaMoed at a time when we've got extra korbanos to bring. So that's how we say it in the, what's the word for it? That's why we say it in Avodah. We say it in Moedim. Like we say Al Anisim on Chanukah, we put it in Moedim. He says you put Yalev Yovim for Rosh Chodesh and for Chol HaMoed in Moedim. And the Meiri says the reason is because we want to thank Hashem for the Rosh Chodesh, thank Hashem for the Chol HaMoed. So it's a matter of thanking, just like you thank Hashem for Hanukkah and Purim. So you put it in Moedim, which we don't pass on that, by the way. We don't say it in Moedim. We don't say Yalev Yovim in Moedim.
So couldn't your blessed intention to put it in Moedim?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I had never thought of that. If you don't say Yalev Yovim, so you have to repeat. Except for Yalev Yovim of Rosh Chodesh in Mariv. But if it's Yalev Yovim of Musaf of Chol HaMoed, you always repeat. Yalev Yovim of Rosh Chodesh and Shachris and Mincha, you do repeat, but on Mariv you don't. Okay. Over Musafin, now what do you do if it's a Musaf Shabbos and it's also Rosh Chodesh or Chol HaMoed? So Masche b'Shel Shabbos, he starts with Shabbos. U'Mesayim b'Shel Shabbos, he finishes Shabbos. V'Omer Kedusha Sayim b'Emsa, and in the middle you mention the Kedusha of Rosh Chodesh or Chol HaMoed, which is not what we do, by the way. That means what you would do is you'd mention a Shabbos davening, and you'd include, actually for Rosh Chodesh we do that, not for Chol HaMoed. For Rosh Chodesh we do that. We include Shabbos, after we start to mention Shabbos, we finish off with Shabbos, in the middle we mention about Rosh Chodesh. Whenever you mention 7 brachas, that's including Shachris and Mincha Mariv, according to Rabbi Lezer and Yeshua Gamliel, what do you do when you daven Mariv on Rosh Chodesh, Friday night, which is Rosh Chodesh, in the tefillah of Atok Akdash, you mention Rosh Chodesh in the middle bracha, not like we do in the Tzei, not like the other time he says it in Moedim. You add it to the middle bracha. So we see that he holds we don't say Kodesh. Rather, we include it. We don't say that we just add it to Tzei or Moedim. It's part of the davening itself. You actually have to add a mention of Rosh Chodesh. Says my halacha. What's the halacha regarding Rosh Hashanah, which is Rosh Chodesh? Every Rosh Chodesh. Do you mention Rosh Chodesh? We mention Rosh Hashanah, and that's enough. And you don't need to mention Rosh Chodesh. And therefore, you don't need to. And you don't need to mention Rosh Chodesh separately. Okay. So let's get clear what we've learned so far. On Rosh Hashanah, we don't mention Rosh Chodesh because the word Zikaron includes Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, which is a Rosh Chodesh, then it depends, the way we pass us. Shachris Mincha Mariv, we say the Yalev Yovim, we say not in Moedim and not in the middle bracha. And when it comes to Musaf, we mentioned the Shabbos and the Rosh Chodesh and the Shabbos and the Yom Tov together in one bracha. Okay. Since we mentioned Rabba asking Rav Huna a question, the Gemara now brings another question, which is mainly regard to us, but not so regard to the Shabbos of Rubi Tchumin. Omar Rabba, ki avina be Rav Huna when by Rav Huna's Beis HaMedrash. Iboy Lom, we ask next Shabbos. Ma olim azman b'Hoshana v'Yom Kippur. Do we say Shechiyonu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? What do we pass on?
Yeah.
We do say Shechiyonu. Say Shechiyonu. So normally when we say Shechiyonu on Kiddush, Yom Kippur we're not going to say Shechiyonu on Kiddush. What do we do? Say damning. Just have to commit it. So what's the Gemara's shaila? What is the shaila? Kibbutz mizban osi comes from time to time, like it comes every so often. And we know, since it's not a regal, meaning we don't have to go to a Mikdash, it doesn't have the same level of simcha. We know. Lo have it be a day Rav Huna did not know. Rav Huna did not know the halacha. Ki asoi be Rav Yehuda when I went to Rav Yehuda, means when Rabba went to Rav Yehuda to ask him. I said, I know a kal chadata. Nam yom minon zman. I say shechiyonu when I say a new pumpkin. If I say shechiyonu when I say a new pumpkin, why? Because it shows a new season has come. That we should say shechiyonu on Mashal Yom Kippur, which is a new time. Now here, there's two words in Rashi, which is a huge topic. If you've got it, it's good to sit inside because it comes up Aveilat Nechas Rosh Hashanah. 6 lines from the wide lines. I call it at the end of the line. When I see a new pumpkin, I say Shechiyonu. When did he say Shechiyonu? When he saw it. So you go past Getzel's or Tesco, Sainsbury's, and you see a new fruit, you say Shechiyonu. Is that what you do?
No.
The Rambam writes like Rashi. Oh, that's good. When we say Kiddush, second night Rosh Hashanah, we say Shechiyonu. Or your wife says, how does she say Shechiyonu, your wife? She looks at the fruit. Wait, looking at the fruit, what does that help? The answer is we rely a little bit on Rashi and Rambam. Rambam also said when you look at it. And as David said about Turkey, the first time of Yushu. Oh, okay, so because of the fact that other Rishonim said, the Mechaber says you should eat it. So because of that, we eat it after Kiddush, but not always the possible. I remember. What? When Megillah? Yeah, but we don't do it twice. It's not a problem. It's only Shei for the second day, Shei for the second day Kiddush, because it's one long day maybe, so we don't know whether it says Shechiyonu, so we look at it. It's only when it's the second time Shechiyonu. So when you blow Shei for the second day, if you blow Shei for this day, it's not Negea. This year we're only blowing Shei for the second day.
Second day normally, what do you do?
What did I do? So the first time I did it, about 10, 15 years ago, I put a fruit down. And I got a special Shechiyonu fruit. I put it down in the bimmer. Before I knew it, it rolled on the floor, splattered everywhere. So since then, I never bothered.
What do you do?
So sometimes, actually, I've never done. Sometimes I say to myself, I'll buy myself a new jacket. But I never get around to it. So I've never actually done it. So anyway, so I just rely on the poskim that it's okay to Shechiyonu, because that's what the Chaver says. But this year I don't need to. No, because when I put the second time, it's the ladies said the correct thing to do is put a fruit on the bimmer, but I've not seen it so often. I did the first. Yes, somebody brings a fruit.
They bring a glass plate.
I didn't pour a plastic plate, put it down. Yeah, new suit's fine. Only the second day. I wanted to mention Rashi. The Rashi held that when you see it, and that's how the Rambam says, the Mechaber says, no, you have to eat it. Okay. No, he just said that. He said the kara chadat on the new pumpkin. He didn't say whether he ate it or looked at it. Okay, Lemaisa. So the question was, do you say Shechiyonu on Rosh Hashanah? The Gemara replied that Rav Huna did not know. Rav Yehuda said, of course I say Shechiyonu. If I say Shechiyonu on the new pumpkin, of course I say Shechiyonu on the new Rosh Hashanah. Omalei, so Rabbi said to him, I'm not satisfied. Rishus le'kavi boyanish. What's the shaila? Good shailas? Was it a good? No, if you say a good shaila, what's the shaila? No, because what is because it's a new thing. It's a new. Vegetables nowadays don't have new seasons. In the old days they did. It was only a summer vegetable. The reason
even a dalas.
Even the last. I think so. Nowadays gets all the time. I don't think it shows the same season. As far as I know. Okay, I have to check it out. What?
Only the rocket, not the Yadena.
I think so.
Is it not a vegetable?
I say I don't
Imagine trees
know.
and it fell on your head.
Okay.
Banana's not called a fruit.
I don't know. Okay. Oh, wait, it's just like a boy.
Banana's a bush.
Are you allowed to say, the Gemara now establishes there's a big difference between having to say Shechionu and being permitted to say Shechionu.
No, I think it's also the new fruit. It's to the fact that it's a new season.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that you can get it all year. You can get.
So this year vegetables don't have seasons.
Rashi says, V'shana l'shana, that which appears from year to year. If something grows the whole year.
Vegetables don't have seasons anymore. They're all year. That's why.
No, again, not necessarily. I can't get nectarines anymore now. Not English ones. I stopped saying nectarines for English ones. Last week I could get nectarines. Why? Because as the season goes on, it starts a new season. That's almost every 2 seasons.
Is it not in the season or not? You've not
Rashi
had
says,
personally?
it has to be something that comes new with the year.
It's not new to you. It's new to the.
Yeah, it's not new to you. It's new to the season. It's okay. If it's something, so you would say Shechionu.
Yeah.
I think apples grow all year round, or do they
No,
not?
it's not turn on me. It's
It's
turn
not-
on me.
yeah, they don't. So you probably could say Shechionu on
There is
apples.
a thing that very few fruits that you can actually say Shechionu on.
Is it because we have them all the time?
They can grow apples in the greenhouse all the time.
So Gemara says like this: "Amalei was just looking at Boili. I never had a question that you're allowed to say Shechionu. Do you have to say Shechionu?" And here the Mishnah Berurah brings down that on new fruit you don't have to say Shechionu. If you don't want to say Shechionu, you don't have to. The Mishnah Berurah says though it's a big mitzvah to say Shechionu even though you don't have to. But on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur we'll see you have to say Shechionu. Amalei. So basically the question still arose: do you have to say Shechionu for Rosh Hashanah and Kippur? Amalei Rav Shmuel Dam Chavayu Einim as man Shlosh Regalim. Rav and Shmuel say you only say Shechionu on 3 Yom Tovim Pesach Shavuos because you don't say Shechionu on Rosh Hashanah. The pasuk says in Koheles, "Tenchilik l'shiva gam l'shmoina." The simple pshat in pasuk is that even if you've given to 7 poor people, you should still give to an 8th. You shouldn't say, "I've given to so many poor people." 7 is a very big number. I've given 7 poor people. I have to give an 8th. Yes, give an 8th. I saw the Lapin says, "Machnise rachmim." We're saying slichas every day. Who's the machnise rachmim? It's the tzedakah that we do, the mitzvahs that we do. That is the machnise rachmim. So every time a poor man comes to the door, he's actually helping you bring machnise rachmim to Hashem. That's the pasuk and pasuk. No, he's not saying malachim. He's saying it's the mitzvahs that you've done. The chesed. Tenchilik the shiva give for 7, gam the shmoina also for 8. Now the Gemara over here, it says different pshatim, not like that. That means, of course, it means giving to Hashem, but not 7 to 8, but rather, that the 7 days in the week, give to Hashem the 7th. That means the 7th day of the week we give to Hashem. 6 days a week we work, the 7th day we give to Hashem. Shmoina lechesmei mila. The 8 days the baby is born, and the 8th day we give it to Hashem, so to speak, we do a bismillah on it. Rabbi Shua Ima, Shiva l'shivimei Pesach, give Hashem 7 days of Pesach. U'shmoina l'mishmonei Chag, you have to give Hashem the whole 8 days of Sukkot. Slightly different. There it's the 7th. Here it's all 7 days of Pesach, all 8 days of Sukkot. U'kshoima v'gam, because it says ten chelik l'shiva v'gam l'shmoina. What's the gam? The Rabbi said tzeres v'shana v'yom kippur. That you also include Shavuos v'shana v'yom kippur. Now, Rabbi Shua said that you should give Hashem Pesach, Shavuos, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos v'shana v'yom kippur. What did he mean you should give Hashem? Give Hashem what? What should you do for Hashem? The Gemara says in the Havamina, my love is man, that you should say Shechionu on all those days. So that's what the pasuk means. You should give Hashem. You should say Shechionu. Says, well, look, who told you to talk about Shechionu? Because our question was, should you say Shechionu or not? So we explained that when Yeshua says give 7 and give 8 and also 8 and is also spare to tell you it's also Shalom Kippur, that it's referring to Shechionu. It says, well, I don't know why the Gemara thought that the Havamina. Well, it says, look, the bracha. It means that those days we should make a special bracha of Kedushas Shabbos, like we do Kedushas Yom Tov in the Shemona Esrei. Says the bracha that mistabek can't be Shechionu. Why can't it be Shechionu? This man, if it actually means Shechionu, it's a man called Shiva Meikah. You don't say Shechionu more than once. You say Shechionu at the beginning of Pesach, beginning of Sukkot, and that's it. So you can't say that you should give Hashem 7 and 8, meaning Shechionu, because you don't say Shechionu 7 and 8. It says, well, Lukasha, no, that's not Shmer. If a person forgets to say Shechianu the first day Pesach, say the second day Pesach, or the third day Pesach, etc., etc. So therefore, the Torah could, the pasuk could mean give Hashem 7, 8, and 8, meaning Pesach, Sukkot, or Shonim Kippur, and Shavuos, and it means say Shechianu. Oh, your question was if it means Shechianu, why 7, 8? You only do one. Answer is you give one, but you do it over 7 days if you get the first day, or give one over 8 days if you get the first day Sukkot. Say Shechianu any day of Sukkot. It still can't be Shechianu. Why can't the pasuk refer to Shechianu? There's a big machlokes with Shechianu. Does it require saying it on a kos or not? When you say Shechianu, can you just walk in the street and say Shechianu? Or does Shechianu have to be with a cup of wine? Can anybody prove one way or another? Very good. The Gemara says that's a proof. Again, if you would have to, but wait a second, on Sukkot, when did you say Shechianu? Well, during Kiddush. Why didn't you just do it on the way home from shul? Why didn't you?
Better with a cup.
The answer is it's always better to do with a kos, but if you can't, you can't. The proof being Yom Kippur. Very good. Okay. But the Gemara in the Havamna was not clear about this. The Gemara in the Havamna thought that you only say Shechianu when you have a cup. If you only say Shechianu when you have a cup of wine, most people don't bother every day of Chol Hamoed to drink wine. So therefore, how can the pasuk mean say Shechianu 7 or 8 days? It can't mean that. Because you have to have it right. Example, it says when Kamoka bin on kos. You need a cup. It must be like that Shechianu, you can say it any way you want, even in the market. It says, well, we're talking about where you happen to have a cup of wine, and he said Shechianu any time during Yom Kippur, during Sukkot or Pesach. So Rosh Hashanah, that works for Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur Mechiyavit. What would you do on Yom Kippur if you have to say Shechianu on the cup? Not like Rav Nachman. Nachman says you're allowed to say Shechianu wherever you want. But if you don't want to hold Rav Nachman, when are you going to say Shechianu? When are you going to say it? If you're going to say Shechianu and drink it, but do it before Yom Kippur comes in, that means every Yom Kippur, an hour or two before Yom Kippur comes in, say Shechianu, and then drink the wine. Once you said Shechianu, once you said Shechianu, you're not allowed to do malachas anymore. Why? Once Rav, we actually had it in brachas. I know it's a long time ago to remember. But once Rav, on Friday afternoon, he thought it was dark, and he went and he davened the Maariv, and he made Kiddush. And the Rav Yomi said to me, Bodlus, did you stop doing malacha after you realized, afterwards the sun came out? Did you stop doing malachas? Yes, but Dilma. So of course I did. I stopped malachas. What do we see from here? That if you decide to do Tosefes Shabbos or Tosefes Yom Kippur, and you bring in Shabbos early, you can't then say, well, it's not Shabbos, let me do malachas. No, once for Shabbos it's too late. Once for Yom Kippur it's too late. So if that's the case, you can't do Shechianu and do it an hour before Yom Kippur and drink it. So what's the other option? Make a bracha and then leave the cup. When you make a bracha, and you have to drink from it. There's different reasons why you have to drink from the cup when you make Kiddush. Some say because it's a bracha l'vatoli, it says b'priyagafen. Rashi, interestingly enough, doesn't say that. Rashi says it's a zilzal, to stand with a cup, make b'priyagafen and shechionu, and then not drink from it. It's a zilzal in the cup. So give it to a child. We don't pass like of acha who says allowed to give it to a child. We'll finish in a minute. He might become a Rosh, meaning he might end up when he grows older saying, every Yom Kippur, what did I do? I drank everybody's wine. So when I'm older, I'll also drink wine. Fake tasteless, this is the second taste on the page. Now what happens if you have a bris on Yom Kippur? What do you do, Levi? Just said you're not allowed to. Because the child. Oh, very good. Says Tosfos, oh, my son, once there was a tanis and they gave it to a child to drink again. So the Gemara says you've got three options. Not drink it as a zilzul or as brachal vatola. Drink it before Yom Kippur, you can't because Yom Kippur. Not drink it, give it to a child will come to be a Rasha. It's interesting, the different Rishonim argue as to what exactly is the problem giving it to the child. Is it that the child, when he gets older, will not keep Yom Kippur at all? Because he'll say when I was a child, I never bothered. Or he'll keep Yom Kippur, but he'll think to himself that he's a mitzvah to make Kiddush on Yom Kippur, and every Yom Kippur night, he'll go home and make Kiddush. Why? Yeah, but we should ask the question. The answer is, there you're not asking him to eat. You're telling him, if you want to eat, you can eat. Here you're telling him, please drink it. So therefore he'll say to himself, You told me
know,
not
you
to
can
keep Yom
ask him
Kippur.
any mitzvah you can ask him.
Why?
The child doesn't do when he's young.
Okay.
I don't have to do when I'm older.
Okay.
Here's
Here we're
something
asking
to
him.
do, yeah.
So the Maisa, at the end of the day, we actually still stuck at question number 1, is do we have to say Shechionu or Shalom Kippur? The Gemara tried to bring a raya from Terchelik Shiur Bam Shmoina that you do. The Gemara says, who says about Shechionu is about Yom Tov? And the Gemara says you've got no raya. One thing the Gemara did prove, by the way, is that you're allowed to say Shechionu without a curse. We'll pass that later. They asked Rabbi Yehuda to go and visit of Chista b'Mali Yom Shata on Rosh Hashanah night. They asked of Yehuda to visit of Chista night of Rosh Hashanah. Go and see how he makes Kiddush Torah Melon. Come on, tell us. They asked of Yehuda to visit of Chista to watch of Chista make Kiddush. He has him, the Chista saw of Yehuda popping in. That means it's an expression. When you move a wet piece of wood, you obviously want to sit down. What does that mean? Normally, when you move wood, you take dry wood for burning. Here, you're taking moist wood. Why would you move moist wood? Because you want to sit. You have a purpose in being where you are. It's not just to take the wood away. When Chista saw Yehuda coming to visit him on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, he realized he's checking him out. So he said like this: Isolate. They brought him kasa de chama, a cup of wine, kaddish from his man. He said kiddush and shechionu, and that's how we pass on. The halachas is man Rosh Hashanah b'Yom Kippurim. You say shechionu both of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The halachas is man after the shuk. You say shechionu even in the marketplace, not just on a kiddush. But ma'aseh lechatchila we say to kiddush. But if you forget, let's say you finish kiddush sukkos by night, and then you start eating the meal. So say I didn't say shechionu. Stand up and stand up. You can sit down and say shechionu. You do not need to. You don't have to wait for your next kiddush. Right. Wait, so the next Gemara does go to about 10 lines on the marathon. But tomorrow is always a very short day on Friday. So I'd like to also, so it's a bit here, a bit there. So I'm going to do the next story, next question. It's another question. So far today we had 3 questions basically. Well, besides for the turnips and for the hadassim, which we said one was a question of Kadesh Yasu and one was a question of you taking for a go. One question was, should you mention Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah? And what would we say? We said that yes, that you don't, because it's Yom Kippur. And then we had a question is, when do you say Yalev Yovoy on Rosh Chodesh and on Chol HaMoed? And finally, do we say Shechionu or Shani Yom Kippur, which we said you do, and you don't have to send the quiz. Another shayla. Let's just do the next shayla. A Talmud Chacham who fasts on Friday, Maula Shlume, should he complete the fast all the way till Nacht, or should he stop early? There's a couple of points of view here. The Rishonim say a Talmud Chacham should fast on Friday. Why should he fast on Friday? Anybody know? Yeah, appetite for Shabbos. Appetite to have an appetite for Shabbos. The Shavuot says that nowadays we don't do it because nowadays we're able to have an appetite even if we eat. But the Shavuot says that you should miss out one meal on Friday. I know Talmud Chacham that don't do it. Taka miss out always one meal on Friday, and it doesn't eat breakfast, so it doesn't eat lunch every Friday. What?
I do by default.
By default, too busy. Okay. No, he's backward about it. Anyway,
Make up in the
so
lunch.
that is what?
They said breakfast, we make up in lunch.
Anyway, the Bai said that's reason number 1. We do it in order to have a big appetite. So Talmud Chacham should, as the Shavuot says now. The big question over here, there's a toss-up. On one hand, we want him to fast the whole day because since he's fasting, a fast is a whole day. So really, he should fast the whole day. On the other hand, we don't want a person to be unhappy on Shabbos, to be afflicted on Shabbos. So if he fasts the whole day, the beginning of Shabbos will be afflicted. So it's a toss-up, which way is better? So what? No, once he took it as a mitzvah to have a better appetite, so he could be happy with himself a tanis. He decided to do a tanis. Once you decide to do a tanis, it's a proper tanis. You can become yourself a tanis any day of the year. So he accepted to put himself a tanis. Not in Chanukah, Purim, etc. But the rest of the year, you can make yourself a fast. This person decided to fast, and it's a proper fast. It's a proper tanis sochit. On one hand, wanted to finish the fast. On the other hand, don't want him to be mu'una on Yom Kippur, on Shabbos. We don't want him to be afflicted on Shabbos. That's the question. What should he do? Oh, no, Kippur's on Shabbos. That's what we say. That Kippur's doing Shabbos.
No,
But if that's not with Tavis, I thought you were going to
what
ask.
about Friday?
Yom Kippur is never a Friday. If it would be in theory,
Kippur's on Shabbos.
yeah.
Therefore, you can't fast on Friday. You said fasting on Friday. But Shabbos.
Yeah. You won't be able. Yeah, you won't be able to fast on such a Friday because then you've got a mitzvah to eat. Yeah. A Sabbath Tavis is a special. Yeah, that does fall on Friday. So lo have be a day he did not know. Also the Kabbalah of Yehuda will have be a day. They asked of Yehuda also didn't know. The Tanya Tishvav Shchalias b'Shabbos. If Tishvav falls on Shabbos like he did this year, did it? Tishvav was Shabbos? No, last Sunday. Last Sunday. Tishvav Shchalias b'Shabbos, or if Erev Tishvav was a Shabbos, you could eat and drink whatever you want. Even like the Suda of Shlomo Melech b'Shati at his time. What does it mean at his time?
When he was the king.
Meaning, very good.
Before he was the king, he was running away around the world.
There was a time when he was running away. Kesuda Shlomo Melech b'Shati at the time when he was king. As they say, the Rishonim will say Yopshat, because he was thrown out of king. So not when he ate, like as Shlomo at his high time, at his best time. Cholios Tishbav Erev Shabbos. If Tishbav was a Friday, you should eat something. You see that if Tishbav is a Friday, what do? You eat before Shabbos comes in. If you eat when Tishbav is a Friday, which is a Tanis Tzibur, and the Tanis Tzibur is always much, much more chomer than the Tanis Yochid. So what's the halacha would be on a normal Tanis Yochid? Would you eat on Friday afternoon? Of course, yes. And then what says Tanya will prove it further. But Tanya, Omar Yehuda Pamachas in Yerushim Te'er Kiva. The Tishbav Shchalias Be'erev Shabbos. It was a Tishbav which was a Friday. They gave him a light cooked egg. The Gomer B'nei Melech, he ate it without salt. Why do you eat without salt? They shouldn't get pleasure, but simply to fill himself off. Not that he was really hungry. To show the Talmidim that's the halacha. So you see that he wanted to show them that you're meant to eat because you don't want to come into Shabbos when you're too hungry. You should finish the fast on Erev Tishbav, which is a Friday, and in the Tanis Yochad, which is a Friday. I'll prove it to you. When Tishbav is a Sunday, do we eat after Shkia on Shabbos? No, we stop before the end of Shabbos. So you see that we don't care about you being afflicted on Shabbos. So if we don't care about you being afflicted for the last hour of Shabbos, so we shouldn't care if Tishbav is a Friday that you should be afflicted for the first hour of Shabbos. What's the problem? What's the answer?
It's not an affliction.
Oh, that's what answers. You're right. What's the difference if you come into Shabbos afflicted, you come out afflicted? No. You ate the whole day. So the last hour you don't eat, it is true, it's a bit afflicted. Because sometimes I always remember when this was a Sunday, the first thing that happens is you get thirsty. But what happens is it's a bit afflicted. You haven't eaten all day. We passed in like a Look at the top Tosis space. It's in a very small print in my more. That Rabbi Akiva that year when he ate when it was Erev Shabbos was in danger. The Binu Chanano, but this many times says he had a Kabbalah Mesiris all the way time from the Gemara. So we can't argue with Kabbalah because it's called Devar of Divrei Kabbalah. It doesn't mean Kabbalah like we use the word Kabbalah as Kabbalistic ideas. Zoya, it means tradition. Rabbi Yehuda who saw the story misunderstood. And he thought that Akiva was doing it, not to come into Shabbos afflicted. He asked, how is it even possible for Tishbav never falls on Shabbos? He says, what happened was by mistake, Tammuz was 30 days, and they ended up there for Tishbav to be on a Friday, because normally Tishbav is never a Friday. Okay, so Maisa, we passed like a Bisi. That if a person fasts on Friday, for whatever reason, Tishbav or privatize, then you have to fast all the way. And when does it actually come together, Maisa? Only on Sabbatevis. The only time because of Sabbatevis. I remember one of Sabbatevis, I was invited out as a bracha. The person sang Shalom Aleichem for 10 minutes.
The longest one I've ever had.
Yes, but one of the longest I've ever had. Yeah, I'm sorry for carrying on a bit further, but it was. Well, Umiyov Dinon Grabius, yeah. I didn't want to stop in the middle. Umiyov Dinon we're up to. And then tomorrow.
Tuesday start or 10?
We also, I think we've got school.
Cheers, 10 plus 2.
Let's do that first now. And then we can start 8.
Oh, that's a good idea.
What are you doing?
What you doing now?
Ask if you're going tomorrow morning here. What time? 6:45.
Yeah. You should do it now. Start Shiur at 8.
Right. Right. Take it. Okay. So we just need to make
Yeah,
groups.
who's coming to Shiur
I've never
tomorrow?
done
You're coming tomorrow?
We can do
Go to us now.
I'm hoping it's going to.
Then we can start 8 in the other room.
So that's a good idea. Wait a second. First of all, I want to thank everybody. Thank you very, very much. The beautiful arrangement that you sent. I really appreciate it. I want you to have the Ksiva Chesiva Teva, a good gewünscht to you. All your tefillah, we accepted and all the learning. Sometimes it's totally said, if you manage this year, we should manage any year. All 7 years with Hashem. We should have a wonderful Yom Tov as well. You should enjoy the Yom Tov. The Yom Tov that you enjoyed. Okay, you as well. And thank you. And Ksiva Chesiva Teva.
We're okay. They were talking to me.
They were the losers.
They were 4 months after.
Yes. Shouldn't be, you can.
They're finished.